Hello, and welcome to the first show of Ancient Secret Wisdom, a show about the ancient healing arts and wisdom of East Asia, in particular Chinese medicine. My name is Tsao-Lin. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and massage therapist. I have a private practice in Soho, and I teach on the clinical faculty of Tri-State College of Acupuncture in New York and at the Eastern School of Acupuncture in Montclair. The ancients believed optimal health could be attained by practicing the Tao, also known as the Way. They understood the principles of practicing the Way as balancing the energies of the universe through physical, emotional, and spiritual levels. This program is devoted to the in-depth study of these mysterious ancient traditions. This wisdom connects us to the golden age of Eastern medicine, a time when tending to an ailment addressed balancing and healing the entire body. So let the stress of the outside world fade as your senses transport you to an ancient, gentler time. I will be your guide on this journey of exploration into the wisdom of Chinese medicine and how it can help you discover your optimal state of well-being. Now, this is the very first show, and I don't have a guest, but what I did was I spoke to my patients and asked them to come up with some questions that they were interested in having answered. So the first question was, what is Chinese medicine? Now, there are 8 branches of Chinese medicine, each emphasizing balancing the energies and of qi and the energies in relation to 3 realms, which is the human, the heaven, and the earth. These 8 branches are massage therapy, acupuncture with moxibustion, Chinese herbal medicine, dietary theory, qigong or related breathing exercises, which would be concentrated breathing, and tai chi chuan or martial arts. There's also feng shui and astrology. The last 2, the feng shui and astrology, are not really taught so much in the schools here in the U.S. and also are slowly being abandoned overseas. They have a lot of spiritual aspects to them, which, with the influence of Western medicine, most schools have kind of pushed them aside, and they've been pushed to be more towards witchcraft. So on this program, I'd also like to explore that aspect because without that spiritual aspect, the medicine changes. So one of the other questions was, is Chinese medicine the same as Japanese or Tibetan, Korean, or Ayurvedic medicine? In some ways, it is the same. They do believe in the transformation of energy, in the balancing of yin and yang, or in opposing energies that are interdynamic and related to each other. They both share, or all of them share, the theories of a meridian system and the concept of qi, which is a type of energy that goes through the body, a life force. And the idea behind that is when somebody is out of balance or their qi is out of balance, then that is an opportunity for illness to occur. So what we're looking at with Chinese medicine, the overall principle is always the idea of balance. Balance in relation to the universe, balance in relation to your family, to what you eat, to how you think, your emotions. All of these will affect your health and also the universe at large. Some of the other aspects that we'll be looking into are, how is this helpful to the average person here in New York? And how does that, relate to someone just walking on the street? Well, I always like to use the example of a text, which is one of the first written texts in Chinese medicine, which is called the Suwen Neijing, also known as Simple Questions, and it's about from the period 300 BC. And it is a dialogue between the Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, and his physician, Qibo. And Huang Di asks his physician that how is it in the ancient times people lived to be over 100, and today the average person lives to be 50 years old. Chibo's response is, today people do not respect nature. They indulge. They overwork, they overeat, and they drink, and they also participate in activities of indulgence. And this is why people live a shorter life. And I find, when I first read this, that it was so moving because 300 BC, without having modern technology, that these people were recognizing that not having a life in balance or not trying to manage the stress level, trying not to work too hard or to think too hard, that even then that they recognized that this was a way of shortening your life. And the same problems still exist today. So the idea behind Chinese medicine, or the philosophy of all of the Eastern medicine, is really to kind of find that balance and your place in the universe, how that works. And you don't have to be a person living in Beijing or in Hong Kong or somewhere in Southeast Asia to take advantage of this wisdom. Another question that I had was, what is acupuncture or Chinese medicine most successful in treating? And this is a great question because acupuncture in Chinese medicine can treat many, many things. Most readily, as in research, has been shown to treat arthritis of the knee and nausea from pregnancy or nausea from chemotherapy. But acupuncture, herbal medicine are very effective in treating many more conditions, things such as back pain, sciatic-related nerve pain, constipation, fertility, many, many things that modern research hasn't written up, but is extremely effective. And we're looking at a medicine that over thousands of years and millions of people, that there has been this empirical information, empirical case studies. And the reason I call this show Ancient Secret Wisdom is because it is ancient and we really don't know how it all came about. And that's part of one of the questions that one of my patients asked me was, how does sticking a needle in a spot on my foot go to my back? And how does that help? And my answer, hopefully, was helped him to understand, and also myself to understand, was that the body is a whole system, and it's interrelated. And even before you're born, all of those cells were connected. And this is something that embryology understands, because before we are defined cells, we're undefined. And we split into 2, then 4, then 8, and suddenly there's a head, and suddenly there are feet, and buds that are arms, and a spine, and a brain. And prior to that, all of those cells were really the same until they started to differentiate. And so the memory of that can still exist in every cell of your body. So the idea behind Chinese medicine of creating balance is that you can affect the entire body through very small things that you do and affect it in a very big way. In a little bit, we're going to be going to a break, And I just want to recap that we're talking about Chinese medicine and the ancient secret wisdom that comes from the East and how it can help you in your daily lives here in New York or wherever you're listening from. And my name is Cho, and this is TribecaRadio.net. Hello and welcome back to Ancient Secret Wisdom. It's a show about the ancient healing arts and the wisdom from East Asia and of Chinese medicine. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and massage therapist. Before we went to the break, I was answering a question that one of my patients had asked me about how acupuncture, which is one branch of Chinese medicine, works in that if you put a needle in one part of the body, let's say the foot, that how can it affect the back? And I had kind of explained that because of this whole system of being connected and interrelated, and also from a Western perspective of cell differentiation and embryology, those theories, that it would make sense that you could affect the back by affecting the foot or treating the foot to treat the back. And just an aside that acupuncture and Chinese medicine works really well with conditions that Western medicine usually is not very good at addressing. So some of those things are pain, especially pain, which is something that Western medicine isn't very good at. And, recently with problems stemming from pharmaceuticals for treating arthritis, and even more recently, an article that was in the Times about the elderly taking pharmaceuticals for helping osteoporosis, that they were finding that it was causing in some people necrosis of the jaw. And so with great caution, looking at the culture here in the West, where usually something that is new is better, almost the opposite is true in the East, where the older that it is or the older that the person is, that they have more wisdom. So I like to think of this as don't throw out what's old so quickly. You have to see what happens with all the latest, because it's not necessarily the greatest. So getting back to something like arthritis, a most recent study that had been done, it was a 10-year study about arthritis of the knee and acupuncture, which showed that acupuncture did phenomenal things for people with arthritis of the knee. And so I've been receiving a lot more calls in my practice for treating knee pain in direct response to that coming out from the newspapers. On the other hand, there are so many other conditions that can be treated with acupuncture and herbs and massage and making some changes or adaptations to lifestyle. And these are, not just something coming out of the East, but really practical information or advice that someone who's a little bit older or a little wiser might tell you to slow down a little bit and smell the flowers and take care of yourself now. So hopefully this show is going to help, give a little bit of insight in what Chinese medicine has to offer and help you to make some educated decisions about your health. So getting back to the previous question about, how the acupuncture affects the whole body system, I wanted to kind of make a commentary about Chinese medicine, or actually Eastern medicine. And although it's very ancient, and many people might feel that it's antiquated and doesn't really apply to us today, I wanted to comment that 5,000 years ago, there was the beginning or started the manufacturing of silk. And silk is actually made from worms, and these silkworms eat mulberry leaves. And when they finish eating their mulberry leaves, they create a cocoon, which is made out of silk thread. This silk thread is then harvested by putting the cocoons into hot water and stirred around, almost like noodles. And then the strands are taken out and processed and woven. Now, I don't know how that someone or some group of people figured out how to harvest worms or cultivate worms to make silk, but there had to be some major wisdom happening there. And also, it's mind-boggling, and for many years it was a secret. So with what I hope to do is to help to kind of unravel some of these secrets that are still out and around and bring them into everyday life. For myself, I'm still learning as a practitioner, which is a lifelong of learning, and hopefully to awaken in whoever is listening their interest in looking to optimize their own health. Now, I'm going to answer some more questions from some of my patients, and one of them was, how can Chinese medicine help when you're on medication? Or is it better to take herbs versus a mood stabilizer for depression? Now, I get a lot of these questions in my practice because I see a lot of people who are looking for answers or were dissatisfied with what they were getting from their primary care physician or from the state of what medicine is here in this country. So it's always a very tricky question to answer, and ultimately I can't tell somebody not to take their medication. What I like to do is to say to them to really look at their entire life, what they're doing. Do they like their job? Are they eating well? How's their exercise? What are their relationships like? How about their family history? All of these components that will affect who they are and who they've become. And then to really look at what the medication is going to be doing for them. And I can't tell someone not to stay on a medication, but I will tell them to do other things to kind of get them off of being dependent on something, because it's not just one chemical, it's usually many things. And the philosophy behind Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine is that there are these many areas in which people need to address their lives. And I spoke briefly earlier about those 8 branches, and what you can do and find for yourself are many of those things on your own, such as doing breathing exercises, which would be Qigong, or what's most popular right now is yoga. And yoga is considered a type of moving meditation. So it's a mindful meditation with movement, and the idea behind that is to cultivate qi, or also known as prana, and to really be with yourself and in your moment and where you are, that place in time, and not to so much be competitive about where someone else is, but really about where you are. And this is important because now most people do yoga, but they look at it as like an exercise and to compete with other people and what classes that they're taking. And this is not the case when you do Qigong or any kind of meditation. It's kind of counter of, what you would be looking to achieve, because you can never tell how well someone is meditating or not. So it's really a private practice and being able to be quiet in your thoughts. So this is something that, people can work on their own. The other is dietary, looking at the different kinds of food that you're eating, not eating in excess. Those are things that, as an individual, those are choices that you can make. So these are just a couple of the things, and very briefly I'm just talking about them because in our future shows I'm going to have some people who can talk a little bit more in specifics about that. So we're going to be going to a break, and this is Ancient Secret Wisdom. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy, and this is TribecaRadio.net. Welcome back. This is Ancient Secret Wisdom, a show about the ancient healing arts and wisdom of Asia, in particular Chinese medicine, but not limited just to that. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and massage therapy. And before we went to the break, I was talking a little bit about some of the 8 branches of Chinese medicine and how you, as an individual, would be able to take advantage of some of those. And one of them was the idea of cultivating qi, which would be, I'd mentioned doing yoga or some kind of qigong practice, which is a type of moving meditation. And this type of practice helps a person to be grounded when you're under stress, which everybody here in New York feels, and I'm sure around the world. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And also, I was talking about dietary theory, things that you can do as far as working with your energy, eating foods properly. And the dietary theory in Chinese medicine and in the East, it varies a little bit depending on what area that you are from. But the overall principle, again, is to have that kind of dynamic balance and to keep the body healthy. One of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and maybe you as listeners will identify this, and this is something that is a silent killer, silent but deadly, and that is stress. And most people definitely experience stress. They know they have it. They say all the time, "I'm so stressed out. I don't know what to do." And many people look for things to do to alleviate that stress, though they may find that they're not really getting the answers that they were looking for. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how stress manifests, because Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbal medicine, massage, the Qigong practices, and even dietary, and at some point I will eventually address the astrological and the feng shui aspect as well, which is the science of placement. There are many things that you can do, but identifying, well, how does stress manifest? Most people, as I said, they feel that they have it. They're not sure what it is. It's this kind of sense of being pressure pressure in the chest. I like to, when I talk about it, use an analogy of a anaconda that's slowly kind of squeezing the life out of somebody. And before you know it, you can't breathe, or you have that tightness in the chest, and you feel tired, you can't move. There's this feeling of dread and anxiety. And it's this also feeling of helplessness. What to do? What can I do? And so this is something that Chinese medicine is great at treating. It helps someone to free their stuckness, their stagnation. The concept behind that is to move the qi, or maybe you don't have enough of qi, and you're going to need to cultivate some of that through your food and your activities. Another question that one of my patients are so smart because they asked all these great questions so that you would have some great answers. What is qi? And this is a very, very big question. This is used a lot in Asian medicine. People talk about their qi all the time, and people have an idea of what it is and an idea of what it isn't. So I'm going to attempt to give you an idea of what qi is. Qi has been defined as a life force or energy. But qi has many manifestations. It is what gives something life, makes it animate. If you look in your refrigerator if you have celery in your refrigerator, when you see it in there, when you first put it in, it's fresh and green and crunchy. And after a few days, it starts to get kind of soft and floppy. And before you know it, it has no life to it. And that is an example of before, when something has qi, and after, when the qi is gone. And in many cases, when the qi is gone, also the energetic as well as nutritional properties are gone. If anybody has seen flowers, that how when they're fresh flowers, they're so vibrant and full of life. And when they're dried up and shriveled, there's nothing there. And that is the nature of qi. It gives life, it gives energy, it transforms. Qi is also something, and it's a word. It's a word to describe movement of energy or activity, something that you can't necessarily see, like you don't see the wind, but you do see the leaves that are blowing around, and you can feel the wind on your face. And you know that the wind is powerful because it can knock trees down and blow boats over and can do a lot of damage, when it goes in to become a tornado or something. So qi is a very important concept in Chinese medicine, and I don't really know if there's a good word in English or in the West that describes a similar thing. Spirit is probably close to that description. When someone has a lot of life or a lot of spirit, then that would also be pretty close to what it means in Chinese medicine too. Someone's full of life. Now, qi also takes on emotional properties. When someone has qi running around, it can transform into heat and then into anger. When somebody is depleted and exhausted, it can show up as being emotionally saddened or melancholy or exhausted. And so these are different states that you can identify with when someone maybe doesn't have a lot of qi. You can also hear it in their voice. There's no strength in their voice. They're very weak, and energetically there's no enthusiasm. So that's something that you can, use for yourself. See how you are. How's your voice? How's the person you're talking to? Do they have energy, or are they without energy. So this is something that, with each show we can talk a little bit more about what qi is, but it's a very important concept, and in terms of talking about, how someone is in terms of how well they are, it then is broken down into, what is going on with their qi. And that is the symbol of whether they're in balance or out of balance, because we always look for dynamic balance, which is this movement. So we look for how is the qi moving through the body, and actually looking at the universe and looking at the environment. You want to look at, wow, what's going on with the plants? What's going on with the trees and the soil? Are there nutrients? What is the energy that's there? And that's something, because we rely on that. This is part of, we're not just ourselves in a test tube, but we have this relationship with nature. And so not just looking at ourselves alone, but looking at, what are we doing? What are we doing to nature? And how are we affecting that? And how is it affecting us? And so this is another area which maybe should be the ninth branch of Chinese medicine, but something that you can do to help your environment to then affect everyone and to affect the planet. These are very big concepts that are in Chinese medicine, this whole idea, the idea of the relationship with the universe, and in this case, a lot of astrology. In particular, the I Ching, which is known as the Book of Changes, or it has to do with transformation. And these are also known as different movements of, where you are and in the world, and as far as astrologically, what that outcome might be when you pose a question. So we're going to be going to a break. Again, this is Ancient Secret Wisdom. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy, and we'll be back on TribecaRadio.net. Welcome back to Ancient Secret Wisdom, a show about the ancient healing arts and wisdom of East Asia, in particular Chinese medicine. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and massage therapist. Before the break, I spoke a little bit about some of the astrological aspects of Chinese medicine. In particular, I mentioned the I Ching, which addresses change, and the format of the I Ching is kind of like an oracle. You would cast coins or sticks and ask a question, and a series of broken lines and solid lines would form what is known as a trigram. And there are 64 trigrams, so this would be something that someone would look at in a book to answer their question. So similar to, is it a good idea for me to get married to this person, or I'm thinking about moving, or, should I embark on a journey, or should I stay where I am? A lot of these things that people wonder, and what the I Ching can offer is some wisdom and advice, some things to think about. It is in an abstract form and is very metaphorical, so it allows the person to kind of explore what the meaning would be for them in terms of making certain choices. The other part of astrology, as most people might know, that there are various animals that represent the Chinese zodiac. And they are 12 animals, and so each cycle is in a 12-year cycle. In Chinese medicine, or actually in the Asian culture, I should say, it's actually very important as what year you were born, the time and the place, and actually the space of where you are. So your relationship to the universe and when you began and when your existence came about and what was going on from a very large universal perspective, from the stars to the season and who your parents are and where you're living, has a big impact on your life. I think in the Western culture, it's kind of like a funny thing to, read your horoscope in the newspaper and kind of not pay too much attention to what it says, or we like when it says something good about our sign. But there are other aspects when it's really carefully mapped out, that things that are really pretty interesting to look at. So these are other branches of Chinese medicine that, as I mentioned earlier in the show, they are not so much emphasized in teachings in the schools and actually have been kind of pushed aside as part of superstition. I personally find them fascinating and interesting, looking at personality types and how people interrelate. And in many cases, you can see some of that with people and how they pair off, and some of the things and attributes that go with the different signs that might affect those relationships. The other part of Chinese medicine, which I had kind of mentioned with time and space and place, kind of leads into something known as feng shui. And that is something that has become pretty popular here in terms of having someone feng shui your apartment and having someone come in and take a look at, where things are placed in the room of where you are. And in China, or in Asia, it's very important as to, where things are in terms of your living and your workspace. It may sound a little bit strange, but if you've ever been in a room and kind of felt like there was something wrong, or you felt uncomfortable, or it was weird, that the feng shui in that room was probably not very good. Now, feng shui actually means wind and water. Another example of looking at the flows of energy. And from a large perspective, when you look at wind and water out in the environment, when there isn't enough water or the seas are very rough, it creates a lot of problems. It will erode away the beach. When the wind is blowing really strong, it can actually destroy homes, destroy all kinds of things. So the science of placement, if you have a house, you don't want to have it too close to the beach, even though it would be nice, because it may get washed away. And if you're out in the middle of the desert, you might get blown away by the wind that will just blow. So having your house or your home or where you are placed in an area that will kind of protect you, or where you can live in harmony, is actually very important. So feng shui is something that you can look up, or there are a lot of people that do it, and there are a lot of books that kind of talk a little bit about, how you can create harmony in your living space. And so this is something that is a nice exercise for people to do. It can affect them dramatically. For instance, if you have a window that's covered and you don't get enough sunlight, that you may find yourself as feeling a little bit depressed. So if you move your furniture around so that you have that sunlight and you have access to the air and to the qi, and that you may find that you feel a lot better. And feeling a lot better makes you a happier and nicer person. When you go outside, people are going to respond quite, differently from maybe how they were before. So you never underestimate what little changes can have an effect, how you are and your environment at large. And, looking at the way a city is built, a lot of the time there is no real thought put into, how the buildings are and how the people are and how they live. And New York is definitely a place, as any big city is, where we're kind of crawling on top of each other and don't really feel like there's a place that is comfortable and safe, or where you can be at peace. So these are ideas and principles that come out of Asia, but I think also around the world the people experience, having a nice little garden, or wanting to have that space, peacefulness, have an environment where when they need to rest, that they can rest, and when they're working, that they're able to work and be productive. And so hopefully that this is something that you can take with you and use and look into. And in our next shows, I'm going to be talking a lot more about some of these branches in a lot more detail. Now, I wanted to get back to another question from one of my patients, and this was something someone had asked me about, if acupuncture could help sleep disorders. And many people experience sleep problems. You can see it all over the advertisements for Ambien or Lunesta or any other kind of sleep aid that's out there. I think people in America are not sleeping, and when they are sleeping, they're not sleeping well. And Chinese medicine, or acupuncture, massage, herbs, all of those things address how someone is doing, with their sleep. And one of the basic questions that I ask, and I know I talked before about stress, was how well do people sleep? So we're about to end the show on that note, which I'll have to talk a lot more about on the next show. My homework for you, the listener, if you can, send me an email asking some questions that you would like to have answered about Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbs, food, any of the topics that I briefly went over. My email is tmoy@integrativehealingarts.com. You can also just go to the website www.integrativehealingarts.com. My practice is located in Soho in New York at 50 Green Street on the second floor. My number is 917-294-3805. And you can also contact me at the radio station by going to tribecaradio.net. And again, this was Ancient Secret Wisdom, and my name is Tsao-Lin Moy, licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and massage therapist. And thank you for listening.